The songs that he did have was music that I made with Dre, not with Game with me, Dre. How We Do, Hate It or Love It, Church for Thugs, Special, Higher, West Side Story. On So Disrespectful, I said Dre ain't say he didn't say nothing.
He lie. Everybody know he lie. But they be good lies though.
They do be good lies.
They
like
be like
what?
great
the Tupac
lies.
picture.
That was one of the best lies ever.
Oh, come on. Y'all still holding that against him?
Yes.
50 with that was a key that was instrumental in our beef too, because I knew that I was at war with somebody who was willing to, go to war in the streets as well.
The Game, an American rapper, has an undeniable talent. He is without question one of the top rappers in the industry. However, instead of focusing on artistic growth and perfecting his craft, he's frequently gotten caught up in petty slices of beef and unnecessary drama. These distractions have burned bridges within the industry and ultimately left a mark on his reputation and legacy in the hip-hop industry. Let's talk about a recent game-changing moment in West Coast hip-hop. Dr. Dre, the Game's former mentor, pulled together a star-studded lineup that was a who's who of the scene. Kendrick Lamar, Schoolboy Q, the entire Black Hippie crew, YG, Mustard, and other West Coast legends. Sounds epic, right? But wait, that's not all. There was one glaring absence: The Game. For someone who's been such a huge part of shaping West Coast hip-hop, his absence didn't just stand out. It left everyone scratching their heads. Why was he left out of an event celebrating the very culture he helped build? It makes you wonder what kind of actions or behind-the-scenes drama could have led to such a major step. One of the big reasons The Game's reputation has taken a hit lately, his habit of bending the truth, or flat-out exaggerating things. And what most fans would call it is faking a lie. But that's not all.
He lie. Everybody know he lie. But they be good lies though.
They do be good lies.
They
like
be like
what?
great
the Tupac
lies.
picture.
That was one of the best lies ever.
Oh, come on. Y'all still holding that against him?
Yes.
Remember that infamous Instagram post where he shared a photoshopped picture of himself with Tupac Shakur, making it look like they'd actually met? Well, fans weren't buying it for a second. They quickly spotted the fakery, and the backlash came in fast and furious.
You
That's not
photoshopped
fair.
yourself on someone else and put a picture out with you and Pac.
It's Pac.
But it's not you.
People have called The Game out for trying to fool his followers, and that's not all. When he was confronted about it on Vlad TV, he insisted he never meant to trick anyone. He just wanted to show love for Tupac, who he sees as one of the greatest rappers of all time. But by then, the damage to his reputation had already been done. There's also the never-ending saga of how many times he's been shot. It's like his story keeps changing, and that just makes people even more skeptical. The details have shifted so much over the years that fans and critics are left wondering what's actually true. And remember when he claimed that Kanye West did more for him in a few weeks than Dr. Dre did throughout his whole career? Yeah, that one definitely got people talking. That statement wasn't just controversial, it was downright false. Let's be real, Dr. Dre is the whole reason The Game's career took off in the first place. Without Dre's mentorship and influence, it's hard to imagine The Game reaching the heights he did. Comments like that don't just ignore the contributions of people who were crucial to his success. They make him seem ungrateful. But that's not all. The Game has also been hit with multiple accusations of scamming young, unsigned artists out of thousands of dollars. He allegedly promised them placements on a mixtape and promotion for their music, only to take their money and never deliver.
Here's how the rapper The Game scammed me into sending him $4,000 for a verse. So I made a beat for him to rap over, and he was going to record a verse and then send it back to me for $4,000. I thought it was legit too. I sent him $500 a month for 8 months until October of 2022. So after I sent him the $4,000, it took him 3 months to get back to me. And that's only because I mentioned I had to get a lawyer.
And then, of course, there are his many beefs in the industry, starting with the most notorious one, his feud with 50 Cent.
I think his career is finished.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying? And it's because, like, his temperament, he won't actually get himself, like right now he's in jail.
Back in 2003, 50 Cent took the music world by storm with his debut album, Get Rich or Die Tryin'. As Eminem's protege, he was dominating the chart, and Dr. Dre, seeing 50's meteoric rise, decided it was time to bring up his own rising star. That same year, Dre spotted a young rapper hustling mixtapes all over Compton. That rapper was none other than The Game, and Dre quickly signed him to Aftermath. Dre and The Game spent months in the studio, fine-tuning his sound. But it wasn't until August 2003 that The Game and 50 Cent finally crossed paths in the studio. They teamed up on a track called So Hard for DJ Radio's Taking It to the Streets mixtape, marking the game's debut with G-Unit on a record. After months of trying to create some buzz around the game, music exec Jimmy Iovine came up with a game-changing idea to catapult his career. With 50 Cent reigning as the hottest rapper on the planet, Dre and Jimmy figured, why not make the game an official member of G-Unit? Dre pitched the idea to 50, and before you knew it, the game was officially part of the crew. By July 2004, the game was getting a serious push from Dr. Dre, even landing his own G-Unit radio mixtape called The Fifth Element to build some hype on the West Coast. Meanwhile, 50 Cent was busy working on his second studio album, The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, set to drop on February 14, 2005. At the same time, the game was putting together his debut album, originally titled N with an Attitude Volume 1, which would later be renamed The Documentary. During a session at his home studio, 50 Cent, being the stand-up guy he was, decided to mute his vocals on several of his own tracks and hand them over to the game, just to make sure his debut would be fire. But when early 2005 came around, things started to go south between 50 Cent and the game. The game began dissing other artists and DJs out of the blue, putting 50 Cent in the awkward position of having to smooth things over, calling around to make sure they didn't kill the game's career before it even started. The tension only got worse when the game pushed for his debut album, The Documentary, to drop before 50 Cent's second album. This didn't sit well with 50, who grudgingly delayed his release until March, leaving a bad taste in his mouth. Then, on January 28, 2005, Hate It or Love It hit the airwaves, and in the music video, you can see the tension on full display. 50 Cent flat out refused to sit in the front seat of the lowrider with the game, a clear sign that things were getting rocky between them.
Are you in game? You think your relationship is repairable?
I don't know what really caused it, big. So I don't try to patch relationship.
The final straw came when the game publicly announced that he had no beef with Nas, Fat Joe, or Jadakiss, three artists who were on 50's enemies list at the time. This public declaration marked the breaking point in their feud. All three of these artists were on 50 Cent's list of rivals, so he saw the game's comments as a huge betrayal. During an interview with Ed Lover on Power 105.1, 50 didn't hold back. He went on a full-blown rant about the game, and right then and there, officially kicked him out of G-Unit, Live on the Air. On the same day, 50 Cent dropped by Hot 97 to chat with Funkmaster Flex about the game's alleged betrayal. Meanwhile, the game was still in New York and fuming mad. He rallied a group of gang members and made a beeline for Hot 97. Things quickly went off the rails, resulting in a shootout between the game's crew and 50 Cent's entourage. Amid the chaos, one of the game's guys took a bullet in the leg, while 50 made a hasty exit through a back door. Just a few days later, in a surprising turn of events, 50 Cent and the game were seen together making donations to the Boys Choir of Harlem and the Compton Unified School District music program. They even hugged it out and announced that their feud was over. But the truce was short-lived. By the time Summer Jam 05 came around, the game was back at it, throwing shade at 50 Cent and the rest of G-Unit. He tossed his G-Unit chain into the crowd and declared he was officially out of the group, kicking off his outspoken anti-G-Unit campaign. A few weeks later, the game dropped his mixtape You Know What It Is Volume 3, and it was packed with jabs at 50 Cent. One standout track was 300 Bars and Runnin', a relentless 15-minute diss where the game went hard at 50 Cent and the whole G-Unit crew. 50 Cent fired back with the Piggy Bank music video in August, where he poked fun at the game by turning him into a Mr. Potato Head character. He also did an interview with Tim Westwood, where he talked about the Hot 97 incident and gave his take on why their feud was so heated. The game kept the feud alive by dropping the Ghost Unit mixtape, which was a full-on diss fest aimed squarely at G-Unit. 50 Cent didn't stay quiet for long. He fired back on his Back to Business mixtape, making sure to take shots at the game. Their back and forth continued with diss tracks and public jabs, keeping their rivalry burning. The game's exit from G-Unit also put a serious strain on his relationship with Dr. Dre. With millions of dollars on the line, Dre had to make a tough call that effectively ended his work with the game. But the game wasn't done yet. In 2006, he bounced back with Doctor's Advocate, an impressive album that he put together without Dre's guidance or 50 Cent's backing. It was his way of showing the world that he could thrive on his own despite the fallout. Surprisingly, behind the scenes, Dre and the game kept things cordial. By the time the Red album dropped in 2011, The game revealed that Dre was still offering him valuable feedback, proving that their professional relationship had remained intact. For years, the game's loyalty to Dr. Dre was rock solid. Even after no longer being officially signed to him, the game remained fiercely committed to Dre, showing a level of dedication he hadn't given to anyone else in the industry. He often talked about how he could call Dre anytime, although if he tried that today, it's likely his calls would go unanswered. The game's relationship with Dre started to crumble, mainly because he let his emotions drive his actions in an industry that values strategy and careful thought. When Dre released Compton and the game appeared on just one track, some fans thought it was odd. The situation became even more noticeable during the Super Bowl halftime show in 2022. Fans expected Dre to bring out a lineup of his star-studded proteges. He delivered with Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Anderson .Paak, Kendrick Lamar, and even 50 Cent, while the game watched from the sidelines in his own city. At first, the game played it cool and acted like it didn't bother him, but knowing his history, it was only a matter of time before his true feelings came out. Eventually, he admitted that the snub did in fact get to him. This confession was like a switch flipping for the game, unleashing a flood of comments that crossed a line he'd never breached before. He started to downplay Dr. Dre's role in his life and career. Ironically, the same Dre he had once honored with a heartfelt tribute on his second album. Suddenly, the game was claiming that Kanye West, with whom he had previously clashed over explicit lyrics about Kanye's then-wife Kim Kardashian, had done more for his career than Dre ever did. The world collectively rolled its eyes at this statement. Fans who had seen the game's rise with Aftermath were quick to call him out for disrespecting the man who had given him a major break. Essentially, the game burned a crucial bridge in the hip-hop world. He's since tried to walk back his remarks and salvage his reputation, but the damage was already done. After the Super Bowl snub, the game's feelings toward Dr. Dre were anything but friendly. If it had been a one-off incident, Dre might have brushed it off, but it was part of a troubling pattern that gradually eroded Dre's respect for the game. Another nail in the coffin was the game's constant attempts to undermine Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick, who had been praised by Dre and looked up to the game as a fellow rapper, was handed the torch by Snoop Dogg in a moment of industry significance. Despite collaborating on several tracks and appearing to have a decent rapport, the game seemed determined to downplay Kendrick's talents at every turn, whether it was driven by competitiveness or jealousy. The game's behavior only pushed Dre further away. Here's the thing. Jay-Z was probably just trying to offer some tough love advice. What he meant was, don't put all your eggs in one basket, diversify, save your money, invest in other things because the rap game can be unpredictable. But the game, being young and eager, took it the wrong way. He saw it as Jay-Z disrespecting him and brushing him off, which sparked the beginning of their feud. Now let's look at it from Jay-Z's side. According to some sources, Jay-Z's issues with the game started with the track West Side Story, the first single off the game's debut album, The Documentary, which dropped on September 7, 2004. After the Super Bowl snub, the game couldn't shake his growing grudge against Dr. Dre. If it had been a one-time thing, maybe Dre could have let it slide, but it was part of a larger pattern that slowly eroded Dre's respect for him. The game's attempts to undermine Kendrick Lamar didn't help either. Kendrick, who had once looked up to the game and worked with him, saw the game's behavior as a sign of disrespect.
Around this time, the game also had issues with one of Jay-Z's artists, Memphis Bleek. This ongoing beef only added fuel to the fire. When the game found out that Jay-Z had taken offense at his line about button-up shirts and Maybachs, he tried to clear things up. In an interview with Ed Lover, the game explained that the bar wasn't aimed at Jay-Z but rather at J. Rule. The game was siding with 50 Cent in the aftermath of the 2002 beef with Ja Rule, and it seemed like the line was more about Ja Rule's flashy style than a dig at Jay-Z. Despite his efforts to clarify, the tensions didn't dissipate. On February 7, 2005, Jay-Z and his Rockefeller crew, including Memphis Bleek, hit Hot 97 for a freestyle session. During his freestyle, Jay-Z took some subtle shots at the game, especially calling out the game's use of his verse without permission. Jay-Z even mentioned, "You need to give me 700% of your record if you are going to use my verse for your project," referring to the unauthorized use of his verse on Get Your Money Right. Jay-Z's freestyle was filled with references to the game, making it clear he was addressing him directly. Meanwhile, the game was having a great time performing overseas with Snoop Dogg, but when he caught wind of Jay-Z's freestyle, he was not happy. On February 10, 2005, the game called 50 Cent for advice. 50, always the strategist, told told him to hold off on responding and let him handle things. But the game, being young and impulsive, didn't listen. Instead, he went off script during a performance in Amsterdam and dissed Jay-Z and the entire Rockefeller crew. This move dragged 50 Cent into the mess, making him clean up the fallout. Later on August 26, 2008, the game released LAX, which contained a few references to Jay-Z, though nothing too overtly disrespectful. However, as 2009 rolled around, the feud flared up again. On July 3, 2009, Jay-Z freestyled the intro to The Blueprint 3 Inches at the Palms Hotel in Las Vegas, taking shots at the game and Jim Jones. The game responded on July 5, 2009, during a performance in France, shouting out, "Oh, F Jay-Z and old ass N." And Jay-Z continued his tour and, during a July 21, 2009 interview with Tim Westwood, dismissed the game as saying there were no real issues between them. A few days later, in another interview with Big Boy's Neighborhood, Jay-Z reiterated that the game was just seeking attention and there was no real challenge behind it. On July 22, 2011, the game dropped a track titled Uncus, which was a cheeky nod to Jay-Z and Kanye West's Otis. He admitted that the song was meant to have some fun at Jay-Z's expense and drum up excitement for his upcoming album, The Red Album. The game even acknowledged that without such stunts, he might not have gotten as much attention. By 2015, the game looked back at his clash with Jay-Z with a sense of pride and defiance. He saw himself as one of the few who boldly challenged Jay-Z and came out on the other side with his career intact. Despite the drama, he took pride in his resilience and ability to push through the conflict. However, that's not all. There were even gang members who felt that the game's respect had been diminished due to his actions, and it was none other than the Crips and the Bloods. We all know that the Crips are all about loyalty, so when they felt the game was stepping out of line, you bet they weren't having any of it. Back in the day, when the game was just getting started, there were a lot of whispers about him. People were saying he wasn't really living that street life he rapped about, that he was just putting on a front. In those days, if you didn't have street cred, you were pretty much dead in the water. Labels weren't interested if they thought you were a fake gangster. And let me tell you, being labeled a fake gangster rapper was brutal. Your reputation was everything, and once it was tarnished, you were finished. No second chances in the rap game, no sir. Now let's break down what it means to be a gang member versus a gangbanger. Some people might think they're the same thing, but there's actually a big difference. Being a gang member is like being part of a club. You pledge loyalty, hang out with them, maybe get a tattoo to show you're down. Just being associated with a gang can land you in trouble with the law, even if you've never been in a courtroom. On the other hand, a gangbanger is someone actively causing trouble. This is the guy out tagging buildings, starting fights, or getting into serious criminal activity. He's the one doing all the stuff that gives gangs a bad reputation. But not every gang member is a gangbanger, and not every gangbanger is a gang member. Confusing, right? Let me explain with some examples. Take the game. He's definitely a gang member, he's tied to a gang, hangs out with them, and throws up their signs. But is he out there causing chaos and making a name for himself on the streets? Not really. Now let's talk about the gang the game was a part of. He joined the Cedar Block Piru in high school, even though his parents were Crips. There's some debate about whether his parents were from Santana Block Compton Crips or Hoover Street Crips, with his father possibly being from Nutty Block Compton Crips. The Cedar Block Piru was formed in the 80s in Compton, named after Cedar Street. Life had a way of teaching the game some tough lessons. He got shot 5 times. That'll definitely make you rethink things. Facing death made him decide it was time to leave the streets behind and chase his real passion, rap. And he didn't just dip his toes in the rap game, he dove in head first. After facing death, the game decided it was time to leave the street life behind and follow his real passion, rap. He didn't just enter the rap game slowly, he went all in. A while back, a video came out that got a lot of attention. It showed the game in a way that some people didn't expect. There's a belief that gangsters have to be tough all the time, with no room for softness. But the truth is, some of the toughest people are also the most caring. When this video was released, people started talking. They said it made the game look weak and questioned his gangster status. Rumors and laughter spread quickly. But here's the reality. Being a gangster doesn't mean you have to be cold-hearted. Some of the hardest people are also the most kind and loving. Then there's Big Phase 100, the game's half-brother, who recently caused a stir by saying the game wasn't really from Cedar Block Piru. The Cedar Block Piru crew seemed to back him up on this. Many people think jealousy might be involved. When someone becomes successful, especially if they're family, others might feel left out. Big Phase 100's comments suggest some sibling rivalry and could be creating tension within the Bloods community. However, it's easy to see why the game has struggled to regain respect in the industry. His unpredictable behavior, mixed messages, and habit of burning bridges have made it hard for others to take him seriously or maintain professional relationships with him.